justice. A black woman, Danielle Carter, is pulled over by two white officers for a minor traffic violation. The situation escalates as they falsely accuse her of resisting arrest. She is brutally handled, arrested, and charged with multiple offenses. The corrupt system. Danielle is taken to jail, where she realizes she isn't the first victim of these cops. Her lawyer warns that the assigned judge, Judge Reynolds, has a history of siding with law enforcement, especially in racially charged cases. The prosecution offers a plea deal, but Danielle refuses, determined to fight. The trial begins. In court, the officers lie under oath, backed by falsified evidence. The judge dismisses key defense arguments and blocks crucial evidence that could exonerate Danielle. The jury, intimidated by the judge's biased rulings, seems swayed against her. 4. Breaking point. As the verdict nears, Danielle's frustration mounts. She sees her future slipping away. A crucial witness, a fellow officer, is about to testify, but is pressured into silence. In a shocking moment, Danielle reaches into her bag and pulls out a gun. 5. The courtroom standoff. Gasps fill the room as Danielle holds the courtroom at gunpoint, not to harm, but to demand justice. She forces the judge to allow the suppressed evidence to be shown. The hidden body cam footage plays, proving the officer's brutality and false testimony. 6. The truth exposed. The courtroom is in chaos, but the truth is undeniable. The judge is forced to step down from the case. The officers are arrested for perjury and excessive force. 7. The aftermath. Danielle is acquitted and becomes a symbol of resistance against judicial corruption. The case sparks a larger movement to hold corrupt law enforcement accountable. The story ends with Danielle walking out of court, not just free, but victorious. X City Street, night, a quiet street dimly lit by flickering streetlights. Late 30s, confident, sharp-minded, drives home from work. Her hands grip the wheel as she hums to the radio. Suddenly, flashing red and blue lights fill her rearview mirror. Danielle sighs, pulling over. Not tonight. She exhales, steadying herself as two white police officers approach. Officer Mi-40s, burly, smug, knocks on her window. Late 30s, lean, quiet, but calculating, stands back, hand near his holster. Danielle rolls down the window. Officer Miller, license and registration. Mind telling me what I did first? Miller's smile is cold. Officer Miller, you swerved back there. Looked like reckless driving. Flat. I changed lanes with a signal. Step out of the car, ma'am. Danielle clenches her jaw. She knows where this is going. X City Street, moments later. Danielle stands outside her car, arms crossed. Officer Miller pats her down aggressively, lingering too long. That's unnecessary. That's unnecessary. Relax, just making sure you're not a threat. Officer Davis opens her car door, rummaging inside. Danielle, hey, you can't. Wham! Miller slams her against the car. I know my rights. Yeah? That's cute. Davis pulls out a small plastic bag from under the seat, something Danielle didn't put there. Well, what do we have here? Danielle's eyes widen. Her stomach drops. That's not mine. Officer Miller, guess you're coming with us. He twists her arms behind her back, too hard, and cuffs her. She winces, but refuses to cry out. As they shove her toward the squad car, she looks up at the nearest traffic camera. Her own Int County Jail holding cell night. Danielle sits on a hard bench, arms crossed, jaw tight. Her face is bruised, her dignity bruised even more. The cold fluorescent lights hum above her. Across from her, another black woman, Lisa, mid-20s, weary but sharp, watches her with knowing eyes. First time? Getting framed? Yeah, Lisa leans forward, lowering her voice. Those two? They got a pattern. Stop a black driver, plant some evidence, make a quick arrest. And Judge Reynolds? He signs off every time. Danielle's stomach tightens. Reynolds? Lisa nods grimly. Been on the bench 20 years. Every time it's a cop's word against ours, guess who wins? Aloud, the cell door slides open. A guard steps in. Carter, your lawyer's here. Jail, visitation room night. Danielle sits across from her lawyer, James Patel, 40s, sharp, exhausted from fighting a rigged system. He slides a folder toward her. You're looking at resisting arrest, possession, and assaulting an officer. Danielle scoffs. Assault? They beat me? Welcome to Reynolds' courtroom. He's tossed out body cam footage before. He won't let us submit the traffic cam footage unless... Danielle leans in. Unless what? James hesitates. Unless you take a plea deal, reduced sentence, probation, maybe. Danielle's nostrils flare. I didn't do anything. Doesn't matter. What matters is what he decides is true. Danielle grips the table. Then I'll make him see the truth. James studies her, concern in his eyes. Be careful. You're up against more than just two dirty... The courtroom is packed. Rows of spectators whisper behind their hands, the tension thick in the air. At the defendant's table, Danielle Carter sits upright in a modest suit. Her hands are clasped, but her knuckles are white. Beside her, her lawyer flips through notes, his jaw tight. Across from them, the prosecutor, a smug Jessica Hayes, 40s, polished, ruthless, prepares her case. Officer Miller and Officer Davis sit at the prosecution's table, wearing their uniforms like armor. At the bench, Judge Reynolds, 60s, stern, eyes Danielle like he's already made up his mind. The jury files in, mostly white. A few look hesitant, but others avoid Danielle's gaze altogether. Let's begin. The prosecutor stands, buttoning her blazer. Ladies and gentlemen, today you will hear the truth about a reckless woman who attacked our brave officers. The evidence will show. Danielle flinches, but stays silent. James Patel stands, cutting in smoothly. Objection, Your Honor. That's not an opening statement. That's a conviction. Judge Reynolds glares at him. Overruled. Proceed, Miss Hayes. Danielle exhales sharply. This is exactly what she expected. Later, Officer Miller is on the stand. He leans back, confidence oozing from his smirk. Followed standard procedure during the arrest? Of course. James paces. And the alleged drugs? You found them under the driver's seat? That's right. James nods, then turns to the jury. And yet, the body cam footage from that night is conveniently missing. Officer Miller's smirk? Officer Miller. Technical error. It happens. Danielle clenches her fists under the table. James steps closer. A technical error that only seems to happen when black defendants are involved? Objection! Prosecutor Hayes shoots to her feet. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Patel. James sighs but nods. Danielle meets his eyes. They both know what's happening. As the trial continues, it becomes clear. Judge Reynolds is blocking every piece of evidence that could clear Danielle's name. Her chest tightens. She sees the jury taking in the judge's dismissals, absorbing them like truth. She realizes if she wants justice, she'll have to take it. Fade to black. Truth exposed. Courtroom day. The tension in the courtroom is suffocating. Danielle Carter sits at the defendant's table, her heart pounding. Across from her, Judge Reynolds looks impatient, as if he's moments away from ruling against her. Officer Miller and Officer Davis sit smugly at the prosecution's table, believing victory is theirs. Her lawyer, James Patel, looks cornered. The judge has denied every crucial piece of evidence, and the jury's faces show doubt. But not in Danielle's favor. Danielle takes a deep breath. She has no more time to play by the rules. Suddenly, she stands up. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. Voice shaking but strong. This court was never going to give me justice, so I'll demand it myself. Before anyone can react, she reaches into her bag and pulls out a flash drive. Confused murmurs. Judge Reynolds leans forward, scowling. Sit down, Miss Carter. But Danielle isn't listening. She locks eyes with the bailiff, who hesitates. There's something in her gaze. A quiet desperation. A truth. This contains the traffic camera footage from my arrest. The footage the police couldn't find. The footage this court refuses to ask for. A stunned silence. The prosecution shifts uncomfortably. Officer Miller stiffens. James Patel springs to action. James Patel, Your Honor, we demand to show this evidence to the jury. Reynolds slams his gavel. That footage is inadmissible. Danielle's voice rises. Danielle, because it proves I was framed? The room erupts. The jury looks at each other, whispering. The judge's mask of authority cracks. Then, Another voice cuts through the noise. Bailiff. If the footage exists, the jury has a right to see it. Gasps. Judge Reynolds' face drains of color. Danielle hands the drive to James, who plugs it into the courtroom screen. On screen, the arrest plays out. Danielle is calm, cooperative. Officer Davis reaches under her seat, plants the bag. Miller slams her against the car, laughing. Danielle's voice is clear. That's not mine. They joke about how Judge Reynolds will take care of it. A collective gasp from the jury. A woman in the front row covers her mouth. Judge Reynolds looks pale. The prosecution fumbles for words. Officer Miller and Davis exchange panicked glances. They know it's over. A beat. Then, a new voice cuts through the chaos. Your Honor, I think we've seen enough. Fade to black. House hallway, day. The courtroom doors burst open. Reporters swarm as Danielle Carter steps out, blinking in the blinding flashes of cameras. Her lawyer, James Patel, walks beside her, looking equally stunned yet relieved. A news crew rushes forward. Miss Carter, how do you feel after today's ruling? Danielle glances back at the courthouse, where two disgraced officers are being led out in handcuffs. Judge Reynolds, now under investigation, avoids the cameras. She exhales, a weight lifting. Like the truth finally mattered. The crowd erupts with questions, but Danielle pushes past, eyes fixed on something ahead. AXT city streets. Danielle walks alone, passing by a newsstand. The headline screams, evidence clears woman framed by police, corrupt judge under fire. She stops, looks at it, then keeps walking. As she crosses the street, a car honks. A black mother and her young daughter are waiting at the light. The mother catches Danielle's gaze. A silent thank you. Danielle nods. The world hasn't changed overnight, but today she won. Fade to black. Was this the scene you were looking for? Let me know if you want changes. A new fight begins. Int Community Center night. A packed room buzzes with quiet conversations. People, neighbors, activists, and former victims of corruption sit in folding chairs, eyes fixed on the front. Danielle Carter stands before them, no longer just a defendant, but a leader. Beside her, James Patel and Lisa, the woman she met in jail, sit ready to support. Danielle exhales, then speaks. I was lucky. I had evidence. I had a lawyer who fought for me. But how many others never get that chance? Murmurs of agreement ripple through the crowd. A young man in the back, his face tight with frustration. That's why we're here. To make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. A pause. Then, Lisa stands. So what do we do next? Danielle looks around the room. We fight, together. The camera pulls back, revealing a community united and ready for war against a broken system. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.